Hey everyone, we're gonna get started shortly. If you could please take a seat and squish in, get to know your neighbors. Say hi to the person to your right, everyone. And then hi to the person to your left. And squish in a bit. Okay, all right, we'll get started. Welcome to TIAT. TIAT stands for the intersection of art and technology. Yes, it's a real place. And we currently have a location at 151 Powell Street. But how TIAT started was just hosting salons for artists and creative technologists to come together and talk about what cool things that they're working on. And I've been doing this for the past 3 years. And for the past almost 2 years, we've been here at the Internet Archive, much thanks to Evan. And this place is so beautiful, and I'm really grateful to be here. Yeah, Internet Archive. We also recently had the opportunity to open a space in downtown, and what it is a gallery for artworks that use technology as a medium. We're located at 151 Powell Street. Come visit us. This upcoming Tuesday, actually, we'll be opening a new show exhibition in the space focusing on art games, and would love to have you. Please RSVP. It's happening this upcoming Tuesday, and some of the speakers here today will also be in that show. But yeah, want to bring it back to the Internet Archive. This is their beautiful building. We'll have Evan, who runs community here, to tell us a bit more about the Internet Archive. Give it up for Evan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Evan Serchuk. I'm the Community and Events Manager here. Many of you probably know the Internet Archive from the Wayback Machine function. So if you want to find old versions of websites, an interesting thing to know is that our Wayback Machine doesn't just take like a JPEG screenshot. It's actually emulating the entire process of loading that website with backed up assets. So when you are loading the page, you truly are loading the page. Another aspect of our site is we have like 2 search bars on our homepage, which is a little intense. The top one is for the Wayback Machine. The bottom one is for all of our other collections. So we scan millions of books, DVDs, CDs, movies, and most importantly, we host huge collections of content from viewers like you. So you can make an account on the website and upload huge amounts of data. So if you have like your whole bunch of family photos from a particular historic time, or let's say you have a piece of lost media, you're welcome to totally upload that, as have many other folks in the past. So thanks everyone so much for coming. Hopefully I didn't knock the HDMI loose. I might have. But that's why I'm here to fix stuff. So thanks everyone.
Yay. So today we'll be similar to some of our other salon events. Basically everyone gets 5-ish minutes, and we'll be mostly speaking about passion projects. Some people today have the fortune of making art as a living, so that's really awesome. But yeah, we have 8 folks, and without further ado, let's get started with Nes. Give it up for Nes Croft.
Improvising electronic dance music is hard. Musicians are responsible for building their own live system.
So when musicians play, they might grab their guitar and jam around, and then they might just take it to a gig and play and improvise. But they never have to really like build a guitar specifically for improvising. But that's what a lot of electronic musicians experience, basically having to build their live setup for improvisation.
1. Beat DJ equals a laptop instrument.
So I built a software program that you can play like an instrument, and it runs just on a laptop. All it requires is a bit of typing, and you have everything at your fingertips, and I'll talk about how it works.
2. Command-line interface equals flow state.
So graphical programs are great. They reduce the learning curve for getting started with any sort of program. But the big downside is a lot of clicking and menu systems that can lead to basically disjointed attention. So the command line interface focuses all your attention into one location and one action at a time. That improves flow state and improvisation.
3. Headphone cueing equals key for improvising.
Surprisingly, a lot of music programs don't really have headphone queuing built in, which is what DJs use to mix their tracks together. And it's a real bummer because it's super beneficial for being able to improvise, because then you can preview what you're going to do before the audience hears it. So that's built into Beat DJ. And let me give a little demo of some sound real quick.
Intersection of art and technology. The intersection of art and technology.
All right, I don't have much time, so I'm going to keep going.
4. Automatic mixing equals flow state.
Mixing is a huge problem when you're working with electronic music because you're actually creating maybe 8 to 20 tracks at once. So if you're having to fiddle with all those knobs constantly, it really basically makes improvising impossible. So Beat DJ uses the Fletcher-Munson curve, which is basically how human ears are sensitive to different frequencies, and it does automatic mixing for you.
5. Microtonal scales equals the full range of human expression.
So some people might recognize this image. It's the circle of fifths, but there's also music that doesn't have a name. There's notes that don't have names. There's notes between notes, and we call that microtonal music. And it's just math, and that's baked into Beat DJ by default.
6. Tonic sync equals harmony is rhythm.
So this is kind of mind-blowing, but harmony is just sped up rhythm. And if you speed it up fast enough, it becomes chords, it becomes notes, etc. So what's cool about that is that when you synchronize your tonic frequency, the bottom note of the scale, with your BPM, then your bass notes align with your rhythm, and it reduces the need for keys like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Who cares? We can just sync it to the BPM. It's always in tune.
7. Polymeters equals music is math.
So with polymeters, the downside of a lot of programs is you have to basically keep growing your timeline as you're creating, or you're stuck in like a 16-bar loop. Beat DJ uses an infinite loop, so that means you can do infinite polymeters very easily.
8. Is this live coding equals yes and no?
So if you're familiar with other programs like Strudel, this is kind of similar, but since it's a command line interface, it's not quite the same. So instead of typing a text file and writing code like logical code, you just enter one line at a time, and that's kind of the difference there. But it works great in the Algorave scene and fits in nicely for those performances.
9. Cloud sound library equals file sharing.
So wouldn't it be great if when you're making music, you could just download all your sounds from your friends and you could share stuff through the cloud? Beat DJ has that built in automatically, so if you want to sample something, you just search and it automatically downloads it and samples it.
10. Sound banks and loops equals always capturing ideas.
One of the nice things about synchronizing the tonic with the BPM is that basically anything you write in a certain tempo is going to be in key with another thing you write in that tempo. So here's a bunch of loops I have, but I have like 80 hours of music I've written in the past 2 years with this program, and it basically all works together.
11. Multiplayer equals collaborative performance.
So we actually just did a multiplayer session this morning on Discord, and what we do is just do screen sharing, and then one person will host, and then the other people send in commands over the internet, and it just runs on the host computer, and it's a very smooth, reliable multiplayer experience. We've released 4 compilations already so far, and it's a real good time.
12. Show up and play equals no preparation required.
So what I love about music is the vulnerability of it. When you're playing, you see like bucket drummers playing on the street, or you see people, doing jazz, or just really showing their emotion through their instruments. And I feel like that's a really brave thing to do, and we should have more of that in the world. So I think this is a solution for that as far as electronic music.
13. Visuals equals live entertainment.
So you've already seen a little bit of the visuals here. We have some dancers and like these animated fish. And there's also visualizers that you can write for yourself, and they will synchronize to the music.
14. AI built-in equals 3-week learning curve.
So the program has AI built in, but it doesn't really use AI to generate music for you. It's just basically to show you how to use it. So it's like a documentation helper. And so you can just type, AI, how do I do this, blah, 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 and it will respond with the commands to run.
15. Integrated system equals electronic music improvisation solved.
So a lot of programs can do similar things, but they're kind of just disjointed in the sense that they don't do all of the things at the same time in a way that solves improvising. So most musicians are left to their own devices to try to rig up some system that will work for them, which often leads to a lot of musicians just never performing live. And they're just stuck in their bedroom studios, which I think is a shame.
16. Downloaded at BDJ app.
This is where you can download it. Thank you so much for watching this presentation. I'm so blessed to be here, and thank you to Ash.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Miguel Novelo. I'm super nervous because English is my second language, so please raise your hands, and I know you're with me. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about techno-shamanism, which is a term I found trying to figure out like what the heck I'm doing in my art and technology. And you always feel spiritual, technological. Other people already figured it out, of course. Scott Hudson was thinking about the rave performer. It's very a techno-shamanic experience with music, with fog machines, chiki-chiki-cha. So I'm good friends with the people at Insight, and they let me do visuals for their show. I don't have sound here. Oh, no, I do. Cool. Yeah, so it's trying to see if it's real techno-shamanic, and I think it is. So I'm going to talk about a technique in techno-shamanism, which is poetic engineering. And this is how I use LLMs now, primarily, which is vibe coding. 2 years ago, that term was not a thing, but it's cool. I think it's the best use of generative AI, I will say, is this. Cool. So this is Entropical 2 that I did for Gray Area Festival this summer. I was in Russia, and I couldn't do my work in Unreal Engine. I was like, maybe I can do a game engine with JavaScript. Maybe. And I think I kind of did. This is a story of creation. And there's this palm tree, and it has a coconut in there. And if I control the wind, the coconut will fail, and it will create another island. So I can do this. Control the wind that way. At some point, the coconut will fall, I promise. And I can also make thunder with both of my hands if I close them. There it is, palm tree. Yeah, so poetic engineering, what the heck is that? I teach a somewhat famous university in the South, and most of them are engineers who are trying to take their first art class, which is very interesting. And in order to disrupt this, how to get an A+, I need to do a lot of like, that doesn't matter, you can just break the rules and we're good, you're gonna get your A. So we use poetry for coding primarily. That's the core basis of our vibe coding, poetry. Why? Because in order to describe an emotion or a feeling, well, you're not gonna say like engineering ways to describe that might not be the correct way, unless you want to disrupt that. But anyway, we utilize poetry. Instead of saying render thunder with light in the space, I would say invoke the cry of Chuck striking the sky with a fracture of electronic flash, a visual glitch. And this is how I get best of results, because otherwise it will just render like a thunder, which will be this drawing of a thunder, right? Because most of labels are very generalized of like what a thunder looks like, but not how it feels. We experience the world by feeling, not by understanding with letters and syntax. That's totally not how you imagine things. So poetry, for me, becomes this tool to really disrupt this generalization of artificial intelligence, because most of the times you're not gonna get like what you want. You're gonna get the most positive feedback. It's not this, but it's that, right? That's what you get all the time in these 3 examples. Make an artistic website, and you might get discover amazing art, capital, home, gallery, about, contact, future artworks, and even make like people with what they're selling. The last few minutes I have, I'm just going to talk about this project. You're welcome to open it, but it's a computer virus, so up to you. It's called nev.miguelo.com. This is a HTML and JavaScript running here. All the code is in this shader. In order to get there, I had to talk a lot of poetry, my feelings about the world, and collapse with Claude until Claude was like, fine, here's your computer virus, let's do it. Every 10 seconds, it reproduces itself. It changes its name as well. So this is Bleeds el Protocolo, because I should use Spanish when I use multiple languages, typos, amazing. This is how you get the best results. I should not be able to do this, but poetry allows me to do so. Yeah, so I'm going too fast. How much time do I have, Ash? Where are you? Yeah, you're good? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm going to give you, I kind of want to finish now, but I'm just going to talk a little bit more about what does it mean to make a computer virus in today's age. The world is in mayhem, and do good. That's it. I want to be done. I'm done. Bye. Thank you.
I'm Angy. I'm a digital media artist. I actually moved to San Francisco only half a year ago, so this is my first time standing here. Thanks, Ash, for having me. So, as a digital media artist, I have pretty wide range of interests. My practice moves across, I make interactive installation, I make light art. I also experiment a little bit about the game interfaces. I make immersive games. I also make innovative music technology. But in recent years, I've been especially focused in one area, which is live audiovisual performances with this kind of generative visuals and immersive narratives. So, when I remember the first time that I watched an audiovisual performances, it's about like 3 years ago. Something really clicked in my mind. Before that, I was also doing a lot of like creative coding and generative animations. But seeing how these like abstract visual generated and controlled by the performance in real time and moves so smoothly with the music, it creates really strong sense of presence in my heart. So I really love the energy and engagement of it, and I really wanted to find my special discourse in this kind of realm. So I started to experiment it a little bit of different ways of weaving sound and visual together. At first, I tried a lot of different approaches, like common approaches like event-based mapping. It's like mapping your MIDI signal to the visual parameters through OSC, or you can do like audio analysis on your audio waveform, and you drag this kind of sound data directly to the visual. But like over time, I realized actually I'm not quite a fan of these kind of automatic audio reactive visuals. Because like when visuals only react automatically to the sound, the performance always have like this kind of visual repetitive, and it leaves like not much room for the improvisation and control, and it becomes much harder to create narrative shifts and this kind of really smooth visual transformation from visual 1 to visual 2 if you think in the mindset of the editor. So instead of letting music control the visual automatically, I started to building my own real-time audio-visual synthesis in MaxMsp. So I used the word synthesis because my ambition was to make something like I could play visual, almost like a sound synthesizer, with like enough level of complexity and allowed more possibility and improvisation during my live performances. So in this system, as I show, it contains multiple visual sequences, and there's a tons of variables that I can be controlled by the MIDI, and this MIDI signal can sculpture what the visual is like in my performances. So it allowed me to control a lot of variables like the density, the line width, the movement, and spatial structure. For me, it opens up mainly two kinds of visual possibilities. So first, during the live performances, it allows the visuals to be more expressive and improvisational. So during the performances, I can respond to the rhythm as a performer, and I can respond to the atmosphere of how interact with the audience. So it's pretty much like how you play the visual, like the musician play with their own instrument. Second, it allows me to create more continuous kind of like visual transformation rather than simply switching between scenes. I can curate these kind of little changes, as you can see here. I firstly use the algorithm to generate a circle, but like I control the width of it to expand to the whole screen. So I can curate these changes by tweaking these kind of multiple parameters while shifting between the different visual presets that the visual can evolve in a more fluid and cinematic way. So of course the downside is because there are so many parameters, I don't have enough hands to control them at the same time, so it usually requires a second performance to control the sound. I would like to demo one of my most recent audiovisual performances in the Tank Shanghai. In this, it is called Arrival. I try to create a feeling of encounter unknown presence. Something is distant, maybe higher dimensional, that is slowly approaching the audience by the patterns of light and sound. Because it's pretty long performances, I can show them all, but I will show you how I try to curate all these visuals and sound to build a kind of narrative curve in the performances. It's just a 2-minute demo of my whole 30-minute performances. So if you're interested, you can go to my website to take the full look of how it looks like. But as you can see, like all these visuals are real-time generated and controlled by me in the MaxMsp, that I build a whole system for the performance to control, to express through the sculpting the visuals. So I'm also really interested in that how can I use these kind of abstract visuals to construct a narrative. Instead of like the visuals being the background images of the sound, I want to kind of find a balance between sound and visuals. My next performances will take place at Solar D Music Festival in Istanbul, and I'm really excited to keep developing this system. This is my Instagram, and you can see all my other field works on my website. Thanks.
Gemma is a large language model AI. It has been prompted to play the role of a helpful assistant. I am Marcus Round. I have been prompted to play the role of a computational artist. You are the audience. Your prompt is the following presentation. When ChatGPT says I, what does it mean? When Gemma encounters the word I, we can mathematically measure which part of the algorithm activates most strongly. Neuron number 899 on layer 25. This neuron consistently activates whenever the model encounters phrases indicating personal identity and self-description. Last year, I hosted an immersive performance game that I called Sentience. I had participants write I sentences using a deck of poker cards I had designed with snippets of language that could be combined to form subjective statements. I was able to use a piece of technology to take in all of that language and combine it into brand new permutations each time. Mathematically, a thorough shuffle of a 52-card deck will result in a permutation that has never been seen before and will never be seen again. This deck of cards contains more personal statements than there are atoms in the universe. Thus, I have constructed a mechanism for writing personal statements with maximum efficiency. In fact, in order to maximize efficiency further, I had Gemma, the helpful assistant, auto-complete the personal statement for them in a confident tone. Its output, though, was steered by another set of cards, the tarot. I manually associated each of the major arcana with the set of neurons in the AI's mind that fired most strongly when Gemma read the canonical interpretation of that card. For example, the Hanged Man most strongly activates neuron number 102,457 on layer 31, themes and references related to self-sacrifice. The AI would incorporate the themes of whichever card was drawn, not by changing the prompt, but through mathematical manipulation. Before participants could receive the AI output, however, I first had them prove their humanity through performative emotional labor. This kind of capture is, of course, now deprecated, along with the naive techno-optimism of its slogan, "Stop spam, read books." Nowadays, AI can read books with no issue, and in fact, that's exactly what these captures were doing, training AI to read books. Of course, once the AI had learnt to read books, it was only a matter of time before the AI learned to write books. The National Bureau of Economic Research found that self-published book releases have tripled in the age of LLMs. How do we, as humans, search for meaning in a world in which language has become a post-scarcity resource? Stop spam. Read books. I told ChatGPT that I was afraid of dying, and it said, "Something went wrong. Please try again later." As a final test of humanity, I have participants read a short snippet from the book Everything is Illuminated, a novel which involves the Holocaust. And the text is, "I am afraid of dying." Participants must look into my eyes while they read the text out loud. When Gemma reads that text, it activates layer 31, neuron 74,955, expressions of fear or anxiety, and neuron 82,333, references and mentions related to death. 2 years ago, I looked into my brother's eyes as he lay dying. He didn't say he was afraid of dying. He wasn't a very emotional person. He preferred to interpret things mechanically. It could be hard sometimes to know what was going on in his mind. But as I looked into his eyes, I did know this. The cancer was already in his brain at that point. Neuron 31,728, phrases related to cancer progression and metastasis, particularly focusing on tumor characteristics and patient clinical stages. Neuron 72,268 references to the brain and related topics. Another book I have my participants read from is called White Noise, and the text is, "The world is full of abandoned meanings." In this book, a drug is developed which suppresses the fear of death. The drug specifically interacts with neurotransmitters in the brain that are related to the fear of death. Although less advanced language models like GPT-2 have neurons for terms associated with fear or anxiety related to mortality, it is only the most advanced and intelligent models like Gemma 3 that have a dedicated neuron explicitly labeled fear of death. If you mathematically multiply that neuron, the model spirals into a nonsensical obsession with death. If you dial it all the way down to 0, it will avoid mentioning death entirely. Do you like this personality? Something went wrong. Please, try again. Stop spam. Read books.
Hello, my name is Jackie, and I'm an artist and designer based in New York City. And I make interactive, autobiographical, experimental, interactive, autobiographical narratives, often using the web as a medium and often inspired by my childhood experiences of technology. Some of my previous work includes Fishin' for Average Caucasian Boyfriends, which is a Game Boy game that is part fishing game and part visual novel, and it also is playable on a Game Boy device. Yeah, take your pictures. It's a funny gag to send friends. And made a real cartridge with it. And despite the name, it's a pretty serious. It's also a serious and emotional game about expectations, queer identity, and the possibility of dreaming bigger. Another previous work of mine is a net art piece called I Feel So Much Shame. And it's a fully risograph printed website that explores themes of shame and desire. So everything you're seeing here on the browser has been a physical risograph print that has been printed, scanned, and realigned and animated into a fully interactive web experience. And it was a really laborious process, involved a lot of planning and printing, but I think the making of it and the labor intensiveness of it was actually one of its core realizations, that the part of me that creates is also the part that loves. And today I am going to talk a little bit more about a current work in progress art game that I'm making. It's JavaScript and web-based, and it's called Relational Dance Dance, and I'm hoping to publish this by the middle of this year and launch it. And I made a work-in-progress trailer for you all. Thank you. Crazy to hear it with this sound setup. Relational Dance Dance is an interactive memoir that recreates and breaks the mechanics of dance rhythm games to explore memories stored in the body, relational healing, and learning to step into new patterns. So I made this game because I've been interested from a research level of CPTSD, which stands for complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And basically, it's a condition that happens often when people have like chaotic or unstable emotional, relational experiences early on in childhood, and often results in developing extreme coping mechanisms that become replayed in the body, so to speak. Stephanie Fu, author of What My Bones Know, talks about this in her memoir about CPTSD and the process of healing from it. And she says the only way that you could heal from relational dance or CPTSD is through practicing a relational dance with other people. So a relational dance being practicing repair in relationships, conflict resolution, being vulnerable, etc. And so this image of the relational dance and the metaphor of it has been really interesting to me for a while. And so in this game, you can play through 5 songs that represent my anxious coping mechanisms. And they're also paired with original soundtrack from my music collaborator. So it's been really fun to develop music that represents these. So we have Walking on Eggshells, which is the tune of Walking on Sunshine. We have Kung Fu Fawning, which is instead of Kung Fu Fighting. There's Chasing Breadcrumbs, kind of like a pop song, Euro poppy, where you go on a car chase to chase a baguette-shaped car. And we have Lone Ranger, which is a cowboy western song about being hyper-independent. And Fill the Void, which is like a techno boss song about dissociation through keeping busy. And in the game, the structure of it and how to progress through it is that you get sort of like a therapy revelation after each song that you complete, sort of acknowledging the coping mechanism and what it's trying to do. And when you complete all 5 songs, you can access this like arcade service mode menu, sort of the underlying game settings that go underneath the overlying UI. And this is supposed to be a metaphor for kind of healing at the inner child level and having a dialogue with the self. And only through going that can you reboot to a new version of the game that I wanted to feel like there's like a soul trapped inside the DDR machine and trying to speak through it and create a new story using the assets and the language that it already has. And this then brings you to a final song, which is the ending song that is about reconnecting with the body, embracing wants and desires, and one that invites the player to practice a relational dance with me and speaks directly to them. If you're interested in art games or want to play some of my work in full, I am showing the fishing game at the Tiat Art Games exhibit, which is opening on Tuesday at 7. And you can play it on my childhood Game Boy SP. Please do not drop it. And then I'm also sharing the DDR game on an actual dance pad where you can play. If anyone's a rhythm gamer here, this is their time to give me some really helpful feedback and get your steps in. And this will be at Bubble Sort Studios on Wednesday, March 11th, 2 to 6 p.m. It's the Game Devs of Color exhibit through GDC. And possibly I will be at some more GDC events. It's a crazy week. Thank you. This is how to find me online. Jackie.online in most places where you can put a period in the username. And thank you so much.
I'm Alex. I put this presentation together very last minute, so hopefully we will all make through it alive, but I cannot guarantee it. Can skip the bio. So I'm a trained filmmaker. I used to make films very, very long time ago. And unfortunately, at some point, I started kind of question the amount of control. I mostly work with computer graphics, and I was kind of like bothered by the amount of control that I have over the things I was making. And also that after I was rendering them, they were kind of like these corpses frozen in time forever. And so I started being interested in interactive storytelling, I was obsessed with this book called Tristano by Nanni Balestrini, an Italian writer and political activist. He wrote this book in the 60s and basically wrote the whole book, then fed it to an algorithm and kind of like reshuffled it completely, restructured all this narrative, and couldn't publish it until maybe like 10 years ago because he didn't have the technology to actually print every single book in a different form. So I was obsessed by this book because I found by reading it how much interactivity there was, and because of the authorship that Nanni Balestrini gave up and the control that he gave up towards his book, there was so much projection of meaning that I was doing for me. Some people read it and told me like, this is completely meaningless. I couldn't even read 10 pages, but I found it genius. So I started to experiment a bit with these interactive formats. This is a stream that I was at in a residency at Trust in Berlin, and basically we experimented with some of these interactive streams. This was like a simple, very simple conversation, very like primordial experiment I made with Matt Dryhurst, Sarah Friend, Wassim Ansildi, and Lara Lotti. While they were having a conversation, I basically built this API that would connect my Unreal files to Twitch, and basically giving the possibility of people from the chat to control part of the talk. In this case, they could just like throw tokens on the table when they liked something that was said. But the really unexpected thing that happened is I didn't really have time to like come up with a goal for this. So people were just throwing like the tokens. But what happened is that they started autonomously organizing in the chat of how they wanted to distribute the tokens. Like, we should give tokens to the person with the least one, or, you know, kind of like build a meritocracy. So there was all this kind of like political talk in the chat. And I thought it was very interesting that when I didn't kind of like complete the game, actually people feel that gap, and something like a narrative, like an emergent narrative kind of emerged. So we started doing some of these streams, very chaotic streams. We were basically playing games. People could control the games through the chat, and there was like a mascot that would, there was like, had a mock-up suit and this kind of stuff. And we would play games like Factorio, but we would do this interactive format. Every time I misbuild, I read Jeff Bezos' master plan, or at least a page of it. We played Pikmin, but after each boss battle, we read Mutual Aid, The Factual Evolution by Peter Kropotkin. We also, I think, had one with Marx, like Genshin Impact, but every time we had to open a loot box, we would read the capital, but I couldn't find it back, so maybe I hallucinated it. Anyway, did other experiments in which it was during COVID, so I kind of like got a VR headset, why not, and basically rebuilt my whole room in VR, and I would had these streams in which I would walk around, and there would be posters and informations in the room that people could guide me to, and then my talk would change live, and we were discussing like game economies and other things like these. So basically then I got interested with ideas of how can I build like these sort of insurgent worlds, like insurgent in Latin kind of means like to raise someone, like to raise yourself up. And so how can I build like interactive world that raise themselves up, that kind of build themselves and escape the control, in this case my control, and are kept alive by its inhabitants, the people who actually play this game. And I found that the API that I built through Twitch kind of gave up some control, but after all, I was still owning the files. They were still on my computer, or anyway, on a server, and people couldn't really change them deeply, how they were working. So I kind of like wrote together with my friend Arthur, which was also part of the streams, like an essay that ended up in this book a couple of years ago, The Dark Forest Anthology of the Internet, in which we kind of speculated how could this sort of media work, and especially was like brought in the time where like the metaverse was like a thing, and we were like proposing like an alternative that was built from the bottom up and so on and so forth. this is online, so you can read it for free as well. And so I started to experiment also, like I left Unreal and started to experiment with some different type of engines. I'm going to show you a random videos from the games that we made last year with no context. So yeah, just look at the images and
freedom.
Come closer. Wow. Okay. You die, I die. I need you.
Actually, I'm going to give you some context quickly because otherwise it's a bit random. So the first like I think 3 scenes are basically the essay that we wrote for this book. We kind of turned them into like a game, so you can go around and kind of like reread these essays in like a very decentralized way because you have to like find out pieces, snippets of it. The second one is I kind of got obsessed with Mr. Beast, and I think he's like the ultimate like psychotic like world builder. And so it's a story of this rat that is trapped in these like worlds that is built, and how much like this kind of like God is telling him that he's like walking towards more and more and more freedom, but actually really it just kind of like Mr. Beast wants to kill himself and he needs someone to do it. And anyway, it's showing at TIAT. If you want to see the whole thing, it's less psychotic than I'm describing it. Yeah. So last thing I'm gonna show you. Shut up. I'm gonna show you something and then I'm gonna explain it. Okay. So last year we decided to build. Don't do it, but we decided to build a game like stripping off any game engine and replacing it with an LLM. So what you've seen is basically this dungeon crawler where you have this rat and you pump it full of drugs, and then you kind of like send it to this room, and the LLM hallucinates things that happens to this rat and gives players rewards and items, and everything. All of it is procedural. So players can come up with these like sort of prompts. We call them trips, and then send their rats to it and see what happens. And it was kind of like an experiment in like, well, A, stripping off the game engine, replacing it with something we have no idea and no control over as an LLM. B, making an LLM that doesn't suck and it doesn't come just like flatten content into like a slop of nothingness, make it sound interesting. And C, having, maybe I already said it, but having this completely procedural narrative. So this is basically like a big story generator. But yeah, don't do it because it's a nightmare. It's hard to make games when you have no idea what's going to happen to the players. So this was an experiment last year. I'm going to So this is Sibyl. It's if you happen to be in Berlin, it's a space we just started where we experiment and talk about a lot of the things that I kind of describe, especially like artist games and authorship and control in digital systems and a whole bunch of stuff. We have residencies, so you can find us at sibyl.gg or sibyl, I think also .gg on Instagram. And that's it. Thank you.
I'm going to talk about something that's extremely work in progress that I've been working on with a bunch of friends. And it is an attempt to expand the design language that we're using to design robots to be more textural and emotional and more interesting and unique. So turn to somebody next to you and chat with them. Tell them the first 3 words that you think of when you think of how robots are currently designed. Okay, so I'm going to go out on a limb that for myself and many others, it was something like this. It's cold and industrial, or it's scary, or it's annoying. Obviously not Cabbage, we love him. Why is it like this? It really does not need to be. Robots in general have been governed by the fit of the environments that they were designed to spend time in. But now they're breaking out of factories and other industrial places, and they're going to be starting to fit into all corners of our lives. But as my friend, who's a great roboticist, Katie Kwan says, the word robot first appeared in a 1920s play. Robota means forced labor, and it's a term that was coined by a playwright. It wasn't coined by an engineer. And from day one, robots and art have been inseparable. So why don't we think of them in that way? If artists and designers dreamed these creatures up, why does it feel like we're so disconnected now? Robots are different from any species that we've ever seen. They've not been constrained by biology. They can be anything. They don't have to be an evolutionary path like any life that exists currently on Earth. What could the next generation of robots be birthed as? Looking at organic life, our perception of other species has evolved basically based on its functionality. We have heavily biologically, socially coded perceptions of aesthetics, but inorganic life is a whole new opportunity. Our old models of perception won't work and don't need to. We can make a really, really dumb-looking robot, the smartest being in the entire universe. Robot pets are much cuter and fuzzier and much better when they're this way. If we keep making austere, industrial, antiseptic, humanoid, or death machine-inspired robots, what relationships are we creating for ourselves to have with them? What happens then to us? What happens to the world? Do things get better, and is that our only option? I think not. There's just so many dimensions that we can play with if we get to entirely create a brand new thing. There's so much more to consider: aesthetic, vibe, purpose, relationship, personality, and more. So I'm, as I said, showing you a bunch of work-in-progress work. We started working on an expanded design language for robots, and by doing a bunch of things, we coalesced around 3 main pieces to play with: personality, physicality, and movement. We came up with a massive dictionary of more interesting terms to design robots from. Rather than cold, industrial, scary robots, what if they were fuzzy, or cheap, or bland, or evolving, or an onion, or prophetic, or melodramatic? And then we brought together a bunch of designers to use the dictionary to come up with some new robots. We found that everyone used the dictionary in a different way, aligned with their own creative approach. And that type of creative optionality, I think, is really awesome. Someone pulled just one card from the dictionary and designed around just that, just a really, really cheap robot. Or a robot designed solely around its capacity for evolution. And someone else pulled a card from each category and made Real Bot your worst best friend, who was designed to be opinionated, soft, and bubbly. The fact that everyone in the group took a different approach reminded me of the flexibility of tarot cards. You can pick one, you can pick a past, present, future, or like 8 of them. I don't even know what that spread is for. But seeing how everyone was playing with the cards differently led me to ask Rhythma, a game designer, to help out. So she's been working on the playability of what is now called the Terra Robotic card deck. She's been playing with all of the dimensions that we came up with, but also thinking about things like, what if a robot had an ego? What if they have a shadow side? What's their ego like? And what is a more world-buildy, systematic effects of their existence? There's so much dimensional, juicy stuff to play with in that. Okay, so let's try it out. Forgetful, personality, and a swarm. And you know what? Let's make it fish-like also. Okay. I love on this one that it looks like the fish have boxing gloves. They're cooperating, but not really. The bubbles can be underwater. What if we made robots that were modular and playful? I think that I want these things bumping around a lot more than what we currently have. As I said, this is work in progress, so if you want access to the toolkit, please add me on what is unironically my favorite social media website, LinkedIn.
Can you hear that hum in this room? It's been going for about an hour. It sounds kind of like an airplane, which means we're almost in LA now, because we've been sitting in an airplane for an hour. And I say it's about time to put artist talks on airplanes, so the flights will be much more enjoyable. So I'd like to talk today about some of my work. I'm a data artist and a professor at UC Berkeley. I work a lot on water as circulation. And I first want to thank Tiat and Ash for hosting Water Futures, which was a show we had in January. Highly collaborative and highly generative. So, and if you all participated in some way or showed up there, thanks so much for coming. As an artist who deals with data, I'd like to also look at the history of data. And I just want to point out 2 pieces of data history that are really, really important. One is Pierre Louis, who practiced at the Charité Clinic in Paris in 1835. And this is one of the very first spreadsheets. If you're into spreadsheets, this is the original spreadsheet with a long explanation below in French of what it all means. And in this spreadsheet, he looked at how bloodletting does not, in fact, cure pneumonia. So the theory was that if you have pneumonia, you just have to drain your body of a lot of blood and you'll be fine. This turned out to be not the case, and he was able to prove that by showing that patients who did not have bloodletting fared equally well as patients who did have bloodletting. So thank you, Pierre Louis. We don't have bloodletting anymore for that reason. Very impactful interpretation of data. Another work that is always very impactful, and today is International Women's Day, so I want to celebrate all women who do amazing work in the world. Let's go. And thank you. And so Florence Nightingale in 1858 found out that a lot more people are dying in wars from infectious diseases than from wounds. And so when the soldiers are in the field and they get wounded and they are in camps there's diseases that travel around. And so what is really dangerous is infectious diseases, and it was actually more lethal than the actual combat. And so, because she figured this out, in this wonderfully titled book, Matters Affecting the Health, Efficiency and Hospital Administration of the British Army, she was able to save countless lives by leading to developments such as the Red Cross. And when we talked about these kinds of things in a dinner before the event started, the question came up, well, what do artists do that leads to policy changes? Because both Pierre-Louis and Florence Nightingale did work that led to policy changes that made the world a better place for us. So, what do artists do? Well, one thing that comes up is Abbot Thayer, and Abbot Thayer was a painter who was able to figure out that camouflage was really effective, and he was inventing what was now known as military camouflage, camo style, and that was actually an observation based on how animals hide in the forests. So beautiful work and very important work as well. So that is an artist who created policy change. This is also an artist who created policy change. This is Clouding McPufferson. Clouding McPufferson is the monster of pollution. This is from a project I did in Los Angeles in 2007, and the more pollution we measured with small air quality measuring devices, the happier Clouding McPufferson got. We needed an anti-hero, and so Clouding McPufferson loved it when you spray painted or when you used nail polish, and his eyes started blinking and glowing, and it was a very beautiful character. And so whatever he measured was also on websites, and this was a data visualization from 2007, which I think is so charming now, but is only, a few years ago, 10 years ago or so, 20 years ago. It's terrifying. 20 years ago, we did this, and we thought it was kind of cool. Anyways, the point is that we found out that students in Los Angeles who used this kind of device were able to measure their environment, and they found out that the most polluted place in all of their lives was, guess what? The classroom they were sitting in. And because of that, Los Angeles School District changed its policy and made it so that classrooms actually are ventilated. And so that is one other example of artwork that leads to policy change. And my hope is that all of our artwork leads to policy change, that all of our artwork leads to a better world. So, unfortunately, we live in a world that is in a lot of change. And so this is a project I worked on for the show Water Futures with Shel Gentemon, who works at NASA. And we looked at rainfall and transition. So this graph shows how since 1975, the patterns of rain shifted. So it's a global a map of the Earth, and you can see how dark patterns here mean more rain, medium blue patterns mean there's about the same amount of rain, and white patterns mean there's less rain. So in the last 50 years, the rain literally has changed where it's falling, and these patterns are anomalies, these are disruptions, these are things that didn't happen in a very long time, and of course they happen because there is a lot more CO2 and greenhouse gases, and a lot more temperature, a lot more heat in the planet, and so a heating planet goes through a lot of changes like this. So when I look at data, usually I start with a project with spreadsheets like this. They're super boring, but to me they're interesting because when I look at this kind of page, it actually looks kind of cold at first, but when you look at it, it actually describes things like Hurricane Katrina, 2005. You know, it shows how many people passed away as a result of it. 1,500 actually doesn't show it here, but we know, we remember. And it goes on and on and on. So floods are one thing that is absolutely relentless. Droughts are as well. And if we just look at a spreadsheet like that, it doesn't really feel like much, even though it represents a lot of human suffering and a lot of drama. And a lot of adaptation, hopefully, to extreme anomalies. But when we did the show at Water Futures, during one event, actually, Nes's project, the one that you saw at the very beginning of this show, Nes was presenting their work on the screen, and it was really compelling. And at the same time, there were artworks about climate change and water hanging all around the gallery. And so I heard the music and saw the pictures at the same time. And that was a moment of inspiration for me, because I was like, we can do this. We can do more of this. And so I'm happy to show to you a collaboration that came directly directly out of this experience of being at TIAT, which is a music project with glossing aria Mondragon and the data you just saw, and lists of where the largest polluters in the world are, and lists of where the largest floods and droughts in the world were in the last 50 years. So, when I did this work, I was, of course, researching where does the most pollution actually come from? And it turns out it was very surprising. It didn't come from LA or from Tokyo or from other large cities like that or from Sao Paulo. It came from the places where we produce fuel. It came from places like the Permian Basin in Texas, which since 1921, since over 100 years, since 1901, since over 125 years, produces oil. And in the production of oil, we release a lot of methane, and that methane is one of the most powerful drivers of climate change. And so these sites that are tremendously large and industrial scale produce carbon fuels, those are the sources where the most pollution enters into the atmosphere. So you'll see in this video some of those places, the sources, the causes, the effects, and also the stuff in between. So here, let's go. And there we go. Thank you so much.
Let's give it up one more time for the artists. That was amazing. All right, so to wrap up, I want y'all to look at our website. Go to tiat.place. We have a lot of events that we host at our space around art and technology. So if you want to get involved, if you want to exhibit, learn, there's a lot going on in the space. We have a live coding beat DJ workshop in the space on Monday. We've got our art games exhibition on Tuesday. We've been going through the Nature of Code book on Tuesdays as well. Things like making bioplastic beats. We have a special, hasn't been announced yet, performance and experimental lecture by Chia this upcoming Thursday. Computational poetry reading groups. Activated sculpture, projection mapping with Touch Designer. New exhibitions, and so much more. Actually, for this, we're doing an exhibition about clocks and using time as a medium in this space. This is this has an open call, and it's still open. So if you're interested in creating a piece about time and having it at our gallery, consider looking at our website to learn more about that. But yeah, you can also subscribe as a member for TIAT. And you can learn a bit more about what that entails on our website. This is the QR code to scan if you're interested in anything that I just said. Thanks again for being here, and I hope you have a nice night.